What is up, Pack-A-Day members? Welcome into this members-only Q&A. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being members. Appreciate you guys a ton. We are going to jump in right away. Got about 45 minutes to an hour to answer all of your questions today. Should get to as many as you guys want to get to. And if we get to more than that, I know this is a very fun time of year with it being draft season. We will get to as many as I possibly can get to. So let's start it off right away with Spider Monkey. Is there any free agent offensive lineman available that you'd be interested in signing as a backup, Lucas Patrick or anybody else for the minimum? I feel like Lucas Patrick got signed, or maybe he was just in for a visit. No, I'm curious. It would not be Lucas Patrick, although I do love him. I think he got signed. Did he get signed for the Bengals? Bengals on March 21st, 2025, Patrick signed a one-year deal with the Cincinnati Bengals. So yeah, Patrick is off the market, but either way, Jedrick Wills, and I want to make sure that Wills has not come to the forefront of a team yet, but yeah, he's a free agent still. So this was a player who was a first-round pick, 10th overall in 2020. I didn't love Will's tape. I liked Will's tape. This is somebody that's had to move positions from where he was in college. I think he's got left tackle, left guard, and right tackle versatility. I think he can play anywhere but center. His career has not gone according to plan. He's had some injuries. He's had some performance issues. This is your Andre Dillard for 2025. This is your former first-round pick that hasn't worked out, gone according to plan, that has some positional versatility that you bring in and you see if you can revitalize his career in Green Bay. I don't know what Jedrick Wills is asking for. My guess is if he was asking for something closer to league minimum, he probably would have been signed by now. So he's probably looking for some sort of more substantial contract. I don't know if he's going to get that. I think Dylan Raduns, who was a second-round pick, signed recently, and Raduns got a one-year, $2.25 million deal with most of it guaranteed. So I mean, like basically a guaranteed contract. If I could get Jedrick Wills on that, I would be interested in that if I were Green Bay. So this is one of those where at worst case scenario, if he's your 9th or 10th offensive lineman on a one-year, $2.5 million guaranteed deal, it's not the end of the world, right? But if for somehow, some way, you can kind of get him back playing at the level he was expected to coming out of college, change of scenery, right? And the best players to get change of scenery deals with are the ones that come from crappy franchises. And no disrespect necessarily meant to the Cleveland Browns, but they are a crappy franchise and they have not had a great scenario there. So you bring someone like that over to Green Bay, get him in a situation where maybe he can succeed, maybe try switching his position a little bit, and maybe you can unlock something there. And if it doesn't work out, it's a very low risk, with a potential reward attached to it. I'd be all for that if I were Green Bay. I don't think there's much else that they need to do at the moment. They don't need to do anything. I think what they're probably waiting for is to see what they get in the draft. If they get through the draft and they don't really attack it in any real way, then they might be a little bit more interested in signing, one of the veterans that are still out there. But if they are able to go and get, somebody in like the 2nd and 5th round, they probably don't have a ton of appetite for adding a veteran at that point. So I think it's a lot going to be dependent upon how they attack that position in the draft. Spider Monkey's coming at 2:17 a.m. You were after it early, Spider Monkeys. 2:19 a.m. this morning. Ron Wolf was the master of trades. Could the reason Goody doesn't trade like him is because of how the rookie salaries are structured versus when Wolf was the GM? I think there's absolutely a piece of that. Now, I don't think Goody is against doing trades. I think he's more than open to it if the right situation presented itself. But go back and listen to the conversation with Justice earlier this week. I cannot stress to anyone enough, and I know most of you know this probably already, but I cannot stress to everyone enough just how important and valuable that it is to get young, cheap players on rookie deals. It's like mining gold. There's nothing that you can do to potentially replace that than have like Zach Tom right now, right? Zach Tom this year is going to get paid, or his contract this year is a $3.5 million deal. That is a 10th of, almost a 10th of what he could be going for on the open market. Jaden Reed this year is on a $1.9 million deal, a little under $2 million. That is probably about a 10th of what he would be going for on the open market. Tucker Kraft is this year getting $1.5 million, probably more than a 10th of what he'd be going for on the open market. I mean, you just start putting some of those numbers together and the value that those guys would have, and it's irreplaceable. Getting guys like Jaden Reed, Zach Tom, Tucker Kraft, we can go on, but on super cheap deals, making $3 to $1.5 million respectively. It's like I said, it is mining gold in the NFL. You do not want to give up on those. And for Goody, like he's kind of has two superpowers, right? One is usually finding value free agents and attacking free agency. He's done a phenomenal job in free agency and on the pro personnel side. And then he's done great in later stages of the draft and finding some real hidden gems that can come in and help the team and provide immediate value. So those are the things that he does incredibly well. And I don't think that you really want to give up those second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth round, seventh round picks far too often because of how successful he's been at finding really talented players that completely outplay their contract. So I think there's a reason for it. Now, if he finds the right deal, Malik Willis for a seventh round pick, he's willing to do it. And that's been a great deal for them as well. So it just depends on the situation in this scenario. But I think more often than not, him holding on to those picks is the right move because of the success that he's had with it. If you had a chance to look at the players in the draft first and in first 3 rounds, what would be your perfect draft? I have had the opportunity to go through. So again, these are going to be deep dives, right? So the first 30, 50 guys in the draft, I go really deep into. So I'm about 20 to 25 guys into that right now that I've taken pretty deep dives into. And then, from 25 to 50, I take it just a little bit of a smidge back, from 50 to 100, a smidge back, and then 100 to 150, take it again, a smidge back from there. And then 150 to 300, I just try to take a cursory glance at just so I know who the player is, that they exist, etc. So I'm at the hardest part, which is going through those first 25 to 50 picks with a very fine tooth comb and really watching all the 22, all 22 in great detail. So like I said, I'm about 20, 25, not close to formulating an opinion on what I would want in the first 3 rounds at this point, but we'll get there. It'll all happen before the draft. Have a lot of time coming up to dedicate to this. Tomorrow, I'm going to be going over the first round wide receiver options. Tet McMillan, Luther Burden, Ebukba. Oh, I can never say his name. Obviously Ohio State wide receiver. I talk about this all the time, and I'll obviously know it before I get to the episode tomorrow. But in all 22, you don't hear the announcers, so you don't hear their names over and over. So Ebuka, and then you have who's the other one? There's one more, right? Tet McMillan, Ebuka, Luther Burden, and Matthew Golden. And I can touch base on Travis Hunter for a hot second as well, but we all know that's not going to happen. So those are kind of the 4 that could be, possibilities in the first round. I'll go over them tomorrow. Studied Shamar Stewart, studied some other players, obviously, that could be potentially available there. Starting to get to a much better feel for these players. Love Jahdae Barron. Absolutely love Jahdae Barron. Think he's probably going to be gone, but yeah, it's coming well. It's one of those things where it's coming well, but it's never good enough. I wish I was 150 players in of a deep dive so far. There's only so much time, but as we get closer and closer to the draft, we will have more and more names that I can go over in greater and greater detail. So is it the Saints for Lucas Patrick? I thought it was the Bengals, but I think it's the Bengals. At least that's what Wikipedia said. Andy, thanks for all your hard work and diligence keeping we owners informed and up to date. We do know that it's hard as a family man to pull it off. Cheers and have a beer on me. CheeseStradamus.com. Thank you so much for that. It was great to get on vacation last week, spend some time in Florida, get to the beach, spend some time with the family. Thankful to Peter Bukowski, Aaron Nagler, Sam Munson, Paul Brettel, and Andrew and Kyle, who filled in for me on Sunday. Thankful to all those guys for allowing me to do some of those episodes early so I could take some time off and recharge the batteries a little bit before we get into this very chaotic draft season. Draft season goes into breaking down all the draft picks, rookie mini camps, and we get to mini camps and OTAs. And then we get that very small window again from about mid-June until training camp, about a month, a little less than a month and a half, where we get to take that one small step back, have another couple of vacations planned during that time. And then regular season's here and we start it all over again. And I cannot wait for it. Does Musgrave have the ability to line up as a big wide receiver and be a field stretching option? Give me 1 second on this. Sorry, I just had to send a message really quick there. Sorry for the inconvenience. Does Musgrave have the ability to line up as a big wide receiver and be a field stretching option? I think in an ideal world, he can do some of that. I think what I would like to see him, I'd like to see him develop as a just sort of a tight end first. And I'm not saying a traditional Tucker Kraft even type tight end, but somebody that you can line up in more 2 tight end sets. somebody that can be the guy that's running up the seam and getting some of those seam plays. Some of the guy that can find some of those zones a little bit better, sit down, Dallas Goedert, get the ball, run after the catch. I would like to see him be used as more of a red zone threat. I think there's a lot of just tight end stuff that I want to see him used with a little bit more. Now, if you're asking if he could, even in let's say the ideal version of Luke Musgrave, we find ourselves with that version of him, right? Do I think he can line up out wide and be like a wide receiver, field stretching, deep? No, I don't think that's what you're seeing here. And that does not really exist. Even the prime tight ends, right? Whether it's, Aaron Hernandez, maybe you could have been the one that a little bit was like a wide receiver. But even Gronk was not exactly that. Travis Kelce was not that. Even Antonio Gates was not really that. You don't really see a tight end lined up wide as like a, Christian Watson-esque deep threat. That's not something that really exists. Even Evan Ingram is not that with his ridiculous speed. Vernon Davis was somebody that you could kind of throw out there and do a little bit of that stuff with, but even the idea of Vernon Davis never really completely came to fruition. But what I will say is I do think you can use him out there similar to what Green Bay did with Jermichael Finley, especially in some of those red zone plays where it can even either go for, you get him matched up one-on-one on the outside, right? And what do you do with that? Do you put a corner on him? All right, well, you're just going to get jump balled to death. You can't put a linebacker on him. Do you put a safety on him? Okay, the safety might be able to survive some of those jump balls, but now he's going to fake the fade and then he's going to run the slant inside. And a lot of those safeties can't stick with him. And he's going to be that guy that beats you on inside for a slant. So they become very difficult matchups in those situations. My hope is that at some point, Luke Musgrave can turn into that tight end that you split out wide, and he's a one-on-one option on the outside where you can give some jump balls to, or he can run a slant against some bigger guys that maybe don't have the change of direction ability that Luke Musgrave does. So I think there's some options out there, but no, not like a true outside wide receiver or anything like that. Dylan, thanks again. Does Jordan Morgan have the ability to line up as a sixth offensive lineman tight end who could actually go out for a pass? Yes, but not as like a legitimate option, right? Could you put him as a sixth offensive lineman and then, have a play here or there for him? Sure. I don't think you're, going to be running too many tight end screens to him or having him run too many outs or things like that. You could do the play where he's lined up as the extra offensive lineman, you roll one way and then throw back to him the opposite way, or some things like that you could probably do, but it's probably more as a gimmick thing than anything where he's actually like a legitimate tight end. But he's got great athleticism, so you could use him a little bit in that way. But again, it's probably more of a gimmicky thing than anything else. PFF ranked the rookie classes today. We were 19th with 3 of our top 5 players basically playing less than 200 snaps. It made me more optimistic about 2025. Browns were dead last with negative 0.112 WAR. That is ouch. So I'm assuming that's the 2024 rookie classes. All right. So yeah, ranking the NFL's most productive rookie classes from 2024. And Green Bay was 19th. Snaps played 3,178. When the Packers selected Edgerrin Cooper in the second round, they probably figured that he'd become a solid starter by year 2, but that ascension to stardom was expedited. In year 1, Cooper played like one of the foremost linebackers in football, ranking 4th with an 85.7 PFF overall grade and a 77.0 plus mark in run defense, pass rushing, and coverage. Sticking on that side of the ball, safeties Evan Williams and Javon Bullard carved out roles as contributors, each playing more than 530 snaps and combining for 0.09 WAR. The Packers will need to find ways to insert first-rounder Jordan Morgan, who saw just 186 snaps as a rookie and finished below 60 PFF overall grade. Yeah, I think had Jordan Morgan and Marshawn Lloyd stayed healthy, I think they would have seen a lot more play last year. Had Edgerrin Cooper stayed healthy during camp, I think you would have seen his ascension start even sooner, and he would have played more snaps last year. And had it not been for Javon Bullard and Evan Williams, at least for a portion of it, until they kind of figured out that spot in the slot for Bullard, be both at the same position, they both probably could have played more as well. So I think that's a top group of, Morgan, Edgerrin Cooper, Marshawn Lloyd, Evan Williams, etc., that can actually play a lot of snaps for this team. But I think that you're going to see them play more. And I think even Tyron Hopper is going to have the opportunity to get into that 4-3 linebacker group and maybe play a few more snaps this year as well. So I would expect a lot bigger impact from that group in 2025 than what we saw in 2024 because of some of those injuries. All right. Let's see. We got to both of those, Dylan. PFF ranked the rookie class. Oh, sorry. Did I just like start over? I did start over somehow. My apologies. Can you do a live 3 to 5 round mock draft right now and go through who you take and why compared to other players available? Not now. Again, I would be doing you guys a disservice and saying that I would feel comfortable in who I would take in that situation. I say this every single year. I'm not trying to fool you guys. I'm not trying to be the expert and know it all. My draft study comes with time, and I would love to be able to be like, pop, 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 pop. Here's all the guys. Here's all they do and everything like that. It's a slow, meticulous process that I want to make sure that the top 100 to 150 guys that I know extremely well going into the draft. Like I said, I'm 25 in. I've got a lot of time tucked away for this over the course of the next 3.5 weeks. We'll get through those guys. And then as we get closer, we'll be able to go through those first 3 rounds. And then, like I said, as we get those last few days, I usually do some cramming on the guys, rounds 4 through 7 that make sense, that have been in through top 30 visits, that hit all the Packers thresholds for the things that they want, and start looking at some of those guys. So get there with time, but it's like drinking water through a fire hose at this point of year. And I always fight with myself, right? Because I could do it a little bit more half-assed, right? Could go through it and just watch a handful of plays on all 22, watch a quick highlight video, read some of the scouting notes and be like, all right, that's Shamar Stewart. That's, so on and so forth. But I do really like going through those top 100 with a fine tooth comb, putting a top 100 big board together at the very end. And then again, once the draft actually hits and we go through those live shows on the day of the draft, being able to really talk about those first 2 rounds in a super educated way. So that's my goal. I think if I try to gulp down 400 guys in a couple of month period, it just, you don't end up doing anyone any favors, right? You don't end up really getting to know any of the guys. You get everyone just a small snippet of, and you don't become an expert of any of it. So I really try to focus on the top 100. Like I said, I'm about 20 to 25 in right now, about a quarter of the way, got 3/4 of the way to go. And I'm very much looking forward to that over the course of the next few weeks. Hope your vacation was good. Glad to have you back live. John, it is great to be back live. Prospects are skipping more and more drills. The Packers love their testing and analytics. Will they just have smaller and smaller draft boards? Will they project athleticism from film, or just ... I guess. So one of the things that we have to remember, even with the athletic testing, and you see this happen every so often, it's like, Green Bay drafted, or some team drafted this guy that ran like a 4.640 or something. And then they're like, yeah, you ran a 4.640, but we had the chip that they had, the next gen stats. And actually he was the fastest guy in the field from a miles per hour standpoint consistently when the game was on. It's like, all right, so the guy didn't run fast in the drills, but on the field, he was the fastest guy in the field. And like, those are things that we miss that teams know. Like, they know all of that next gen stat tracking and the data chips and have all this stuff. They're going to know the athleticism from a lot of that stuff. And just again, all the next gen stats analytics and those sort of things that we don't have access to. So even if they don't have timed results and things like that, it's not going to be a complete deal breaker. Also, a lot of the guys that aren't doing testing it's not always this way, but a lot of those guys are the top 20 guys. And a couple things. Number one, Green Bay's picking at 23. There's probably not many of those guys that they have the opportunity to get anyway. The second thing is that those guys are easier to project in general. Those guys are going top 20 because they have the athleticism. They've gone out and made incredible plays. They're not difficult projections. Now, it's not a guarantee, right? LVN has not exactly been this easy projection from college to the NFL. There's multiple examples of that, but you aren't probably counting on that stuff quite as much anyway. And a lot of the guys that are on back of the draft in rounds 2 through 7, you're going to be able to get that stuff for. And if there's somebody that you're thinking of taking in the first round that didn't have that testing, you might bring them in for a top 30 visit and just get to know them better. Whatever. I don't know that you're obviously going to have them go through drills and things like that, but just go see them out on the practice field to just kind of get a feel for what they are like in person. I think that can be very valuable in those situations as well. I've been coming around on the Banks signing. Goody had to improve offensive line depth or be at the mercy of injuries. The only way to be somewhat confident of that in the draft is a first round pick. and they need to be able to go best player available as much as possible to get that star. I wouldn't have hated a shorter, cheaper deal for Zeitler, but older players have more injury risk. Yeah, I think there's a lot of sense in that, John. And what I'll add to this, and I think one of the things that I've talked about a little bit, but maybe not even enough, is think about it this way. Green Bay really merged into a run first team this past year and have become a pretty impressive running team in large part due to Josh Jacobs. Their worst run blocker on that line, bar none, no questions about it, was Josh Myers. That's my take, at least. Maybe somebody will disagree. I believe Myers had a very bad run grade from PFF as well. 50.9 run blocking grade, which I'm going to assume, I don't know what Rashid had. Rashid was at 53.5, so not a ton better, but better. Sean Ryan was at 58.7. So again, not a ton better, but better. Zach Tom clearly is going to be better. 87.8. Yeah, just a little bit. And then Elgton Jenkins was 61.1. All right. So this is somebody, to me, Aaron Banks, by the way, was 68.9. I know that Zach Tom graded higher from a PFF standpoint. I believe that Aaron Banks is going to come in and be the best run blocking offensive lineman on this team, or at least has the ability to be in that conversation. Maybe it ends up being Zach Tom. Maybe it ends up being Elgton Jenkins. But I believe Banks is going to be in the conversation for being the best run blocker on this team. You are going from your worst run blocker in Josh Myers, no questions asked, in my opinion, to what could be the best run blocker on your team. I think that has the ability to be a huge, huge value add. And I think the pass pro, which Myers was mostly fine. And I know they're not apples to apples from a positional standpoint, but you're just taking Jenkins and moving him over. Like Jenkins is going to have a very similar impact at center that he did at guard. So it's really a replacement of Myers for Banks, I should say. And I think you're going to see a similar pass pro ability that Josh Myers had with Aaron Banks. So I don't think that is going to change, but I think you make a huge improvement in run blocking, and it gives you more depth and again, just competition. And again, just a different way to kind of go about building that line, which I do think is going to be better this year. So I do think that he is going to be a really solid value add for this team. Let's see. Jordan obviously threw too many picks this past year, but how many bad routes contributed to INTs? How many true turnover worthy plays did he have? I mean, I'd have to go and, kind of do a deep dive on it a little bit more. Let's see what, actually, I have to look at it in another one. Give me 1 second. Player report, Jordan Love. Give me 1 second. Sorry for the wait. Turnover worthy plays. Any play where the quarterback receives a -1 or worse on a play. So this would have been, PFF had him at 17 turnover worthy plays. He did go weeks 13 through 18 with none. So 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, he had 0 turnover worthy plays. In the wild card round, he had 4, which was his highest on the season. So let me just run through these really quick. Week 1 against Philly. I think this is the Musgrave interception. No, this is what should have been the pick 6 on the little throw that he made in the flat to Josh Jacobs that was not intercepted, but Zach Bond should have picked that one and took it to the house. That was turnover worthy play number 1. Turnover worthy play number 2. This is, I think, the Musgrave interception, threw to Musgrave over the middle, and safety picked it off for Philly. In week 4 against Minnesota, turnover worthy play number 3 this one's a tough one. This is the play to Christian Watson against the Vikings where Watson went over the middle. The linebacker made a ridiculous play on this one. This was just a phenomenal play. Vikings had this play studied. They did a great job on this. And it's definitely, I guess, in the turnover worthy play category, but credit the Vikings on this one. No bad route though. So that's number 3. Number 4, also against the Vikings. He is going long to Bo Melton down the field into double coverage. Could have been picked off. That's on Jordan. Next one, number 5, also against the Vikings, is the one that they had made that big comeback. We're down by 9 with 6 minutes left. We're in Vikings territory, and he just threw it up to Dontavian Wicks, and Byron Murphy made the super easy interception. Definitely on love on that one. Then you had the play against the Rams in the red zone where he's rolling right, tries to throw it away and throws it right to the defender. Pick 6, probably the worst play of his career. Houston, this is the one where he throws the quick out to Wicks, and the defender comes off of the other wide receiver, which was Dobbs, deflects it, and then the linebacker picks it off. Great play by the defender, but that was the next one. Next one was also against Houston, and he drops back to pass, throws over the middle, and just overshoots. I think it's Watson on the play. Yeah, overshoots Watson. Yeah, was intercepted by the Texans on that one. Jacksonville in week 8 was the next one. He's dropping back to pass, and he throws the pick. It's a deep out to, I believe that's Dobbs. It's a solid route. It's a great jump. I think it's Jaire Jones, the Florida State kid. This is why I do the deep studies. Now I'm going to be mad if I have his name wrong. I think it's Jaire Jones, right? Yeah, Jaire Jones, Florida State, right? Yeah, Florida State. See, this is why we do the deep studies in the draft. He makes a great jump on it and picks it off. Not a terrible decision, but definitely a great play by the DB, and definitely more on Jordan on that one. We get to Detroit. This is the one you could clear. He's trying to throw the screen pass, throws it right to Brian Branch, pick 6 before halftime. Chicago week 11 is the next one. This is the one where he just overthrows. He makes the right read, throws to Kraft in the flat, and he just overthrows Tucker Kraft in the red zone, and it's picked off by, is that Jalen Johnson? No, it's not Jalen Johnson. I can't tell who that is. Next one is week 12 against the 49ers. And a lot of time in the pocket, throws deep down the field to Watson into double coverage, and the safety had the ability to make a play on it and pick it. Ill-advised throw. Next one is against the 49ers. Does not see the corner undercut the Christian Watson route underneath. Good play by the corner, but just needs to have better vision on that ball. Easily could have been picked. So these are on Jordan, I would say, more often than not. Then we get that, again, 8-week stretch where he does not have a single turnover-worthy play. Get to the playoff game, going against Philly, throws over the middle, throws high to Dontavian Wicks, almost intercepted by Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I believe that was. So that was the next one. Next play against Philly, 10-0 Philly, goes deep down the right sideline. Is that Darius Slay, I think? Darius Slay runs it down, gets his head turned, picks it off. A little bit underthrown by Jordan. Was a 50-50 ball to Dontavian Wicks. Still 10-0 to Philly. Jordan back to pass. Does not see Zach Bond over the middle. Zach Bond falls off of Tucker Kraft, and Bond returns it. And then 22-10, 12-point game, 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Jordan just throws one up at the end into triple coverage, easily picked off. Game over, season over. So those were I probably didn't need to go through all 17, but those were the 17 turnover-worthy plays from Jordan. He played in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. He played in 18 games. So you're talking about one every game. I don't know if that's super high from a quarterback standpoint. I'd have to go and look into the numbers a little bit more. I don't know if I can look at I don't know how to pull it up like the total quarterback chart, but he cut down on it in the second half, threw a couple balls up for grabbing that Philly game at the end is what it is. But I do feel like he improved upon it a ton in the second half of the season. But the point remains, he needs to do a much better job of taking care of the ball. Did you see that, Justice, on the Athletic Football Show? Cool to see Packers get national exposure. Yeah, Justice is a machine. You'll see him all over the place. A lot of respect for Justice out there in the football community. He does phenomenal work, and we are very, very lucky to have him on when we get him on every week now, which is awesome. Do you think the Banks signing will improve the screen game? It can. Banks has the ability to get out there and really block in the screen game. I don't know. I don't want to make a statement that he's like this epic player in the screen game or anything like that, but I do believe he has the ability to get out there and move and pick up some impressive blocks. So I wouldn't expect anything drastic, but I do think he can absolutely be a guy that helps the screen game more than he hurts it. Is there value in NFL teams taking non-premium positions in the draft if those have a higher % chance of hitting, say a running back like Bijan or Genti, versus taking a 50-50 swing at a premium spot? Chili Cheese, there is no right answer to that question. It all depends. I think what you want to try to do is try to attack the positions that you can't find or you're going to have to overpay to find. And, there's a lot of value in that because you can't find a quarterback. If you need a quarterback, it's very difficult to find it, right? If you need a deep speed wide receiver, as we saw this offseason, or just a big time playmaking wide receiver in free agency, it's very hard to find that. If you need a shutdown corner, good luck. Although there were a lot of corners available in free agency this year, so maybe that one's changing a little bit. If you need a, premium defensive end, a pass rusher, very difficult to find. And if so, you're going to pay out the nose to try to get one of those guys. Offensive line, very tough to find. I think more often than not, you want to go shopping for those players when you can find them, because if you need them in free agency or via trade, you either can't find them or you're going to have to overpay to a very significant way. That being said, what you also can't find are unless you're the Giants and you give up on these players, it is hard to find Xavier McKinney's. It is hard to find Saquon Barkley's. And those are very important players for your team. If you can find those players, whether it be via free agency or the draft, you have to take those opportunities too, even if they're maybe quote unquote non-premium positions. It's tough to find extremely talented and great players, even at the non-premium spots. Again, I know the Giants gave up on two of them very foolishly this past year, but you don't always see teams do that. And sometimes Giants, but you can't count on that. There's no perfect way to answer it. If I could have a unbelievable running back or an average pass rusher, I mean, take your pick. An average pass rusher is probably going to go for 20 mil per year. An unbelievable running back probably goes for about 20 mil per year. There's no perfect answer. And that's why with team building is you can go in a variety of different directions and we can all be Monday morning quarterbacks with it and everything, but there is no perfect solution on how to build a team. Get great players everywhere. That's probably your best bet. Good luck doing it. It's hard to do, but there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. And if you can get a super talented player, I don't think it really matters if they're a running back, linebacker, safety. You need great players at those spots too, or they're certainly going to help you. But if you can find them at the premium positions, they're going to help you even more. Trans Rights, good to see you, my friend. If Elgton is an all-pro center, why would Green Bay wait till he's 30 years old to switch him to center? How would it not have been apparent years ago? Seems like a misstep. This is, again, one of those value things. Is a Pro Bowl guard more important than an all-pro center? I don't know. You can make the argument for it. Centers a lot of times are the ones that are helping, meaning guards and tackles get one-on-one matchups and centers get to help out on a play if you have a four-man rush. It's not always that way. There's obviously nuance that comes with that. But you could make an argument if I could have a Pro Bowl guard that can also kick the tackle or center when I need it, that's maybe more valuable than an all-pro center. And I don't expect Elgton to go out and be an all-pro center. I think if you were to hear what they would say about Elgton, if they, let's say he had been at center in his career so far and they were kicking him to guard, I think what you would hear Green Bay saying right now is they believe that Elgton has the ability to be an all-pro guard. I think they believe that to be the case as well. So I don't necessarily think that this is a misstep or any sort of thing like that. I think they're just saying they believe that Elgton is a great guard. They believe he can be a great center as well. I think they believe that he has the ability to be an all-pro guard. They believe he has the ability to be an all-pro center. And which one of those is more valuable? Again, it's sort of in the eye of the beholder. You can make an argument for guard. You can make an argument for center. I'll say this, guards go for more money than centers. It's not particularly close. I mean, for the most part, it's not close at the moment. So the league would tell you that the guard is the more important one to have. So I think it's just that's more the conversation. And he's been great at guard and there hasn't been the need to move him. You've had center, so why move him? Now there's the opportunity to move him and they're just saying, hey, we think he can play really, really well at center as well. Draft prep is going good and bad all at the same time. Good that I am making progress with it. Bad because I would like to have 500 more guys done than I have done right now, but that is the same every single year. Who truly plays the board how it falls, then there is a chance by the time the board falls for a wide receiver, it's too late for an impact player. If so, any chance we look at Elijah Moore post-draft? No, I don't think Elijah Moore will be in their plans at all. I think they will continue to look throughout the draft and find guys that can help them and then go into camp with competitions. And remember that there could be a wide receiver that's available during cutdown times. There could be a wide receiver that's available, during trade deadline. It's not a, you have to get one now or else. These wide receivers usually do become available through the course of the season, and Green Bay could look to see what maybe options would be there through the course of the season where they can maybe go and trade for someone as well. I don't know why, but I just think given we have needs, but also have a looming backup quarterback void, skimpy linebacker room, some pending contracts, Goody is going to be forced to stockpile picks over impact players. Thoughts? I don't think he's ever going to say no to an impact player for more picks. How this works more often than not, if there's an impact player there when Green Bay is selecting, or if they feel like they need to move up for that impact player, like they felt like they needed to do with Jordan Love, they will do so. And here's how this kind of works in real time, right? You're sitting on the board at 23 and pick 15, you have pick 23, pick 15 is on the clock. And you're looking at your board and you've got 5 first round picks that are still on your board, all similarly valued. Maybe one's a little bit higher than the other. Maybe you call up because you've got one guy that's a little bit higher. You call up to 15. The cost is too much. All of a sudden, 15, that guy that was top of your board goes. You've got 4 guys left. Pick 16 comes. One of those guys go. You've got 3 guys left. Pick 17 comes. Not one of your guys. Picks 18. One of your guys. Pick 19. Not one of your guys. Pick 20 is one of your guys. Now you're sitting at pick 23. Pick 21 is up, and you've got one of your guys left on the clock, or one of your guys left on the board. So you start calling. Can we get up to 21? We want to get 2 spots up. All right, it's going to cost a 3rd or 4th round pick, but we're going to get the last first round guy on our board, and we feel like that guy is valued. Can we get up? You call 21. You can't get up. All right, they don't take him. You call to 22. Can we get up to 22? No, you can't take him. And now you're sitting at 23. Thankfully, your guy is still there, and you take your guy and you live happily ever after, and you get your last first round pick that was there at pick 23. Awesome. You feel very happy about everything. You're certainly not moving down in that situation. A couple other things can happen. You have those six guys or 5 guys, I don't know what I said, that are on your board, and pick 15 comes, 16 comes, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 comes, and 2 of those guys are off the board. You still have 4 guys, we'll just say 4 guys left that are there at pick 23. And pick 26 calls and says, hey, we want to offer you a 3rd round pick to come up to pick 23, and you can move back to pick 26. And Green Bay looks at it and they say, all right, we pick 23, 24, 25, we'll go. Pick 26, we're guaranteed to get one of those first round picks that we still have very equal on our board. The guy that we really liked already went. All of these guys are very similar. They're all good positional values. We can get the extra 3rd round pick, and in this situation, we still are guaranteed to have at least one of those guys still on the board. So they get to pick 26, and maybe 2 of those guys are on the board. They take the one that they like the most, or maybe one's left. They take that guy, or maybe they get there and 4 guys are left again. And now they can move down another 4 spots or 3, whatever, and make sure that they get one of their guys as well, if they can find that trade. And you could see a couple moves down. I think that kind of happened probably with Jaden Reed a couple of years ago when they moved down twice. Probably had guys like Brian Branch, Jaden Reed, amongst others, that were on their board that they liked, that they felt comfortable with, where they were still going to get one of them no matter what, traded back twice, picked up picks that I think were used to get Dontavian Wicks and Dontavian Wicks and Carl Brooks in that situation, and still got their guy in Jaden Reed. The other one that, of course, happens is you've got your 5 or 6 guys that you like on the board, and you're sitting at pick 15, and 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 come, and all of them go. You weren't able to get up. You weren't able to get your guys. And now you get to pick 23, and you're looking at your board, and you've got 15 guys that are top of the 2nd round grades. None of them are really standing out more than the other. And now you're actively looking and shopping around to say, hey, can we move back in this? And maybe you're willing to take a 4th round pick to move back 5 spots, or a 3rd round pick to move back 10 spots, or seeing what is out there that you can move back, because now you've got this cluster of players that are all extremely equally graded. You missed out on those first round guys, and now you're just looking to move back to get as much more draft capital as you can, because you don't have a preference for who's on your board at this point anymore. And you have, again, 15 guys with the early 2nd round grades on them. So move back as far as you can to make sure that you still get, and maybe you can maneuver so you get 2 of those guys now. So there's a lot of different maneuvering, but those are sort of the scenarios that you work through in real time. And I'm sure Goody is going into this draft thinking, if I could get out of this draft with 11 or 12 draft picks, that would be great. But He's not going to sit there in the first round and see impact player, maybe that guy that he really loved, all of a sudden they're at 23 and some team comes up and says, hey, we're going to give you a third, a fourth, and a sixth to come up 3 spots. I guarantee you, no question about it. He's going to see that impact guy on his board and say, as much as I would love the picks, there's an impact guy that we love that's still on the board. We're not going to move away from this. We're going to take that player and bring him in. So that's sort of the process that general managers go through when they're on the clock and having to parse through what makes sense. And this is where when Goody says the board dictates, the board is going to dictate if players are starting to fly off the board. The Jordan Love pick, by the way, I would be willing to bet you almost anything he was the last first round grade that they had on their board. I'd be willing to bet you. They move up, they give up I think it was a late 4th round pick in that situation to move up 3 spots or whatever it was. I would be willing to bet you he was the last first round grade. All the wide receivers just went, Ayuk and Jefferson and everyone else. All those guys just went. I'd be willing to bet you almost anything he was the last first round grade that they have. And if they did not get, they were easily willing to give up that 4th round pick to get that last first round grade. The board is going to dictate it. It's not what you would ideally like to do in getting more picks. You're not going to pass up on that star potential player just to get more picks. So I think you'd love to get more picks, but it's going to be dictated by the board. King Kermit, go Pack, go. Love and football. Last one. How much do you read into the LVN comments made a while back, followed by the weekend win with who we have edgewise when it comes to our draft strategy? Nothing at all, because this is Lion season. And unlike Stephen Jones, who basically gave a definition of like Matthew Golden of like what they're looking for in the first round, where somebody on Twitter commented of like, why don't you just show your draft board and show Matthew Golden at the top of it? Maybe he's lying, whatever. It could be much ado about nothing, but you want to throw teams off the scent as much as possible. You don't want, if you're giving out signals of like, oh, Green Bay clearly needs an edge rusher, and you're bringing all these edge rushers in for top 30 visits, and you're talking about how, yeah, we need to really address edge. Guess what happens? Let's say they love Shamar Stewart. They want Shamar Stewart at pick 23. And like the scenario we just talked about, maybe Shamar Stewart's the guy that they love, and he's falling, to pick 20, 21. Green Bay's trying to get up. They can't get up. 22 comes, and they're a pick away from getting Shamar Stewart. And the whole rest of the league knows, oh, Green Bay, they want an edge rusher here. Shamar Stewart's the last guy on the board. He hits all the things that they normally look for. If we want Shamar Stewart, what do we need to do? We need to get to pick 22, because Green Bay has sent out the signals of we need an edge rusher. So the comments of, yeah, we're very happy with our edge rusher group and our pass rush. We have everything that we need from within. Definitely don't need to go chasing any pass rushers in the first round. No team jump us to pick 22 to take them right in front of us. I think there's probably some subterfuge there. And I believe he probably means it to some extent, where he's confident that the players that they've taken, he clearly believed in LVN as a first round pick, clearly believed in Devontae White as a first round pick, clearly believed in Rashawn Gary as a first round pick, Kenny Clark, huge contract just a year ago. He clearly has some firm belief in these players. So I don't think it's a complete and utter lie, but I don't necessarily take it at face value this time of year either. It's early for you, Andy, but who's your favorite realistic Packer so far? I've fallen in love with Jalen Royals and Siobhan Ravel. Appreciate you. I do love Shamar Stewart. I want to watch him more, though. This is definitely going to be one of those players where I need to watch a couple times. No question about it. I understand the production concerns. I really do. I wish I could look people in the eye and be like, well, he didn't have the sacks, but his pass rush win rate and true pass sets was amazing. It wasn't. I wish I could look you in the eye and say, well, his sacks weren't incredible, but his ability to get into the backfield and cause run stops was incredible. No, he didn't have a lot of tackles for loss. It was not a top prospect level pass rush win rate, was not at the top level for run stops or tackles for loss, was not in sacks. That's a real question mark. And Greg Cassell, who I trust as much as anybody in this business, he had a great comment. He's like, he's one of the most freaky athletic players. You can see it. I can see it. Greg Cassell can see it. Your mom can see it. My mom can see it. Like everyone can see it. It doesn't take any sort of scouting, all 22, throw on anything, and you can immediately see the freak dude that's there. It's not a difficult thing to find out. You don't need to see the 10.0 RAS score. You can see it right away. Craig Cassell goes on to say he's not a good pass rusher. Doesn't know how to rush the passer. He's like, I watched 6 games and there's no plan. There's no finishing. He's not a good pass rusher right now. It's the beginning of the process. You don't draft for what they are. You draft for what they're going to be. And I like Shamar Stewart a lot. I think he's going to be an impact pass rusher in this league. I get the hesitation. I get the trepidation. I'm not trying to convince you that Green Bay should take him. If you're like, you know what, I've had enough with I don't want to hear traits. I don't want to hear prospect. I don't want to hear upside. I don't want to hear, I want somebody who's ready-made right now. Totally get it. You're not going to find an argument from me. When I turned on the tape, I saw somebody who has the ability to create chaos. That's just finding the peak of his powers. That is going to be an impact player in this league. I would love Shamar Stewart, but I'm not, even me that really liked him first watch, I want to go back and watch him more because I need to really gain even more nuance and understanding as to why he did not have that production that we all would have liked to have him seen. If you're going to spend a premium pick on him in the first round. So a player that I like, but like I said, I'll get to more and more of these guys, get into the heat of like the players that are going to be taken right around 23 now. So very, very excited about that. What are your thoughts on doubling up on receiver in the first 2 rounds of the draft, Burden and Higgins, if it works out? Not against it. If it works out that way, it would have to just be the best players available. And you know what? If it is, Ted McMillan and then Luther Burden and Jaden Higgins or, whatever it might be, right? Insert whatever players, Matthew Golden, and then, Jaden Higgins or, maybe get Trey Harris later, whatever it is, right? If it fits the right way and those are the best 2 players on the board, do it. Here's where I'm at. I'm not expecting anything from Christian Watson. Ian, by the way, thank you for the super chat before. I think I forgot to say that. I'm not expecting anything from Christian Watson. Anything that I get is a bonus. I really like Bo Melton and Malik Heath. I cannot count on anything of them from being a dynamic receiver at this point. I love Bo Melton, really like Malik Heath, but I'm going to take anything that I get from them at this point as a bonus. I like Romeo Doubs. I like Dontavian Wicks. I like Jaden Reed. I really like Jaden Reed. Romeo Doubs probably leaves next offseason, as does Christian Watson, or at least have the opportunity to leave, right? And I'm not counting anything out of McCole Hardman, and there's nobody else worth, even mentioning in that conversation. I'm kind of going into this of like, I've got Doubs, I've got Reed, I've got Wicks. That wasn't good enough, and there's a good chance that Doubs is gone next year. So I've got Wicks and Reed going into 2026. The best 2 on the board are 2 wide receivers in the first 2 rounds. Do I think that's probably going to be the case? No. Do I think that's probably the best use of resources? No. But if they're the best 2 available and you want to go in that direction, bring it on. Go get weapons. Hope you hit on one of them in a huge way and hope they can make a huge impact for you. I would be all absolutely for that. Again, don't think it ends up being that way, but it's an interesting conversation to have. I think Packers fans were disappointed in the free agent moves because they had 2 players they had never mentioned. No, you mentioned Hobbs once, but never heard Banks' name. What did you miss? Couple things. When we're prognosticating for which players Green Bay might select in the draft or sign in free agency, you're taking historical trends into perspective. You're taking what Green Bay likes to do, their height, weight, speed, their profiles, what they've done in the past, your biggest needs. You're looking at all of those things and trying to make the best assumption for what Green Bay was going to do. Let's be totally real. If I did a Nate Hobbs breakdown prior to free agency, I think people would have been maybe somewhat interested. If I did an Aaron Banks breakdown, people would have been like, why are you doing an Aaron Banks breakdown? Doesn't make any sense. Some people would have watched just because they're daily listeners or because, I've probably garnered the just respect of like, oh, if Andy thinks Aaron Banks can be a guy, he's going to be a guy. And let me be abundantly clear. I don't care if like the episode would have got 0 listens. If I thought somebody was going to be a legitimate Packer target, I would go over. You guys know I'll talk about undrafted free agents. I'll talk about any of it, right? I'm not in this for the clicks or the views, not in it just for the money. I want to talk about the guys that I think are legitimately going to be Packers. People ask me all the time how I come up with all the topics. It's stuff that I want to know. It's stuff that me as a hardcore nerdy Packer fan really wants to dive into and understand more. And if I think Aaron Banks is going to be a huge target for Green Bay, you bet your sweet ass I'm going over Aaron Banks pre-free agency. So what did I miss? Let's start with Aaron Banks. You looked at the guard position going into free agency and you said Elgton Jenkins, Jordan Morgan, Sean Ryan. There was still the chance, or at least the thought process, that Green Bay could bring back Josh Myers at center for maybe a cheaper deal. There was at least a thought that it maybe could happen out there. Seeing a version where Green Bay was going to need or want a guard was difficult to kind of see through Morgan Ryan and Jenkins being at guard, right? Even if Sean Ryan moved into center or Jenkins moved into center, you still felt like, well, you have two other starters in Morgan and Ryan. You're probably good there. You're certainly not going to invest a major piece of money into that position. The other red herring here of why I did not think this was a thing is that Green Bay, for the most part, has not valued guard. Elgton Jenkins has been primarily the exception. Think of when they've let Marco Rivera walk. They did not give, they gave Josh Sitton that contract and then released him as soon as kind of the money came due and let him go to Chicago. Went with Lane Taylor on basically like a vet minimum instead, rather than continuing with Josh Sitton, who was playing still very well at that point. Jenkins has kind of been the exception to the rule. They, over the course of Ron Wolf, Ted Thompson, and even early Brian Gutekunst, have not valued that position at a very high rate at all. And they usually, and one of the things that, quite frankly, Green Bay does best is finding these tackles in the draft, moving them into guard, and like they just know how to find really talented interior offensive linemen. It's kind of one of their superpowers. So the idea that they would need to go spend 4 years, $77 million, or even sign any big time guard in free agency never really entered my mind for, I think, very clear and obvious reasons. You had guys that were already there. They didn't value the position. Now, in hindsight, a couple of the things that we didn't know, right? Number one, that they had already had the plans to move Elgton Jenkins to center. Number two, that it sounds like they have plans to move Jordan Morgan back to left tackle. So you do actually have, if Jordan Morgan's a tackle and Elgton Jenkins is a center, your only other starting guard at that point is Sean Ryan. So you actually do have a hole there that we did not sort of know existed at the time of pre-free agency. And we have seen Green Bay not have the real desire to spend money on a guard in the past. And they clearly did not have any issue with having the appetite for going for a big time guard in free agency. So based on historical trends, would not have expected it. And based off of how the current roster was set up, would not have expected it. He hit all the height, weight, speed, athletic profile, things like that. If we were talking about a team that normally would pay for guards and then was in need of a guard, Aaron Banks would have been somebody we would have talked about pretty aggressively prior to the draft. But those were the two big red herrings that sort of stood in the way of why nobody ever talked about Aaron Banks, right? But you remove those. You remove the historical, they don't usually pay guards big money, and you remove the now knowing that there is actually a hole at left guard that they needed to fill because Jenkins is going to center, and Banks makes all the sense in the world, especially with the type of athlete that they like at that position. He hits everything that they look for, knows a similar sort of system coming from Kyle Shanahan, height, weight, speed, super athletic, fits the offense, fits the scheme. It's I don't want to say it's a no-brainer, but it's really easy to connect dot A to dot B and say like, all right, this makes very logical sense. At the time, it didn't. Nate Hobbs is very similar. The red herring for Nate Hobbs was slot corner. And even if you sort of made the jump to the conclusion that, hey, Keyshawn Nixon is going out wide, the Jaire situation is still out there and not resolved at the time. Were they going to go spend big in free agency? And if they were, it felt like, what were they going to go after? An outside corner. An outside corner felt like the position that they would attack more aggressively, unless they loved Carrington Valentine, which at this, maybe they still like him, but I don't think that was a, motivating factor one way or the other. They felt like they needed somebody who could play outside corner. They went out and got one. The red herring was, I viewed Nate Hobbs, and most people view Nate Hobbs as a slot corner. If you take away that moniker of slot corner, height, weight, speed profile, playing in a very similar sort of system, scheme fits perfectly in the defense, super versatile, unbelievable athlete. It makes all the sense in the world. And had you taken away that slot moniker and said, hey, outside corner, Nate Hobbs, we would have talked about Nate Hobbs quite a bit. So those were the red herrings that stood in the way and why we didn't talk about him more. At least I'll just say for myself, I can't speak to other people, but Green Bay not generally paying guards and not seemingly having the open position at the time was the reason I didn't talk about Banks, and sort of the slot corner moniker that I thought he was going to be going into free agency with already having Javon Bullard there, Nixon being able to play in the slot. Kalen King primarily played in the slot. Corey Ballantyne, the slot guy, was still a potential re-signing for them. I did not see them going aggressively with a slot corner. So that's why I didn't talk about Nate Hobbs. Once you say, well, he's going to be outside corner, then all bets were off and we would have talked about him a lot more. So long story short there. Andy, what are your thoughts on, we talked about that. Sorry. All right. I lied, piggybacking off the above Ravel question. Ravel and Morrison both have injury concerns coming out. Great players, but would be wild to assume we would draft either really high, right? No. I need to study both of them to be able to say, like, yeah, Green Bay would take them with pick 23. If they pass the medical and Green Bay loves both of them as players, like, they're going to base that on the medical. I know very, very closely from somebody in the organization that Green Bay and Brian Gutekunst trust the medical staff basically, like, unequivocally. Meaning, if the medical staff says, stay away from this player, they're off the board. There's really no questions asked. They rip them off, take them off. They're not going to go in that direction. They trust the medical staff to say, you don't pass this. This is not a passing grade from a medical standpoint. All right, we're done. It's over. We're not going to take him. And vice versa. If they say, like, yeah, he's going to be great, there's no long-term concerns here, body checks out, everything looks good, then they're going to go on the tape evaluation. So I can't tell you what the medical staff is going to say about Ravel or Morrison. But if the medical staff says no, it's going to be a no. If the medical staff says yes, they will be on the board. Where they put them on the board is up to their then evaluation of the tape. But that's going to mostly come down to the medical evaluation for both of those players. Am I crazy for thinking O-line is a good idea in the first round if a good player is available? They may not start year one, but most players don't start year one. You will never hear me upset with taking an offensive lineman. In any round, whether it's a tackle, center, guard, get good players on the offensive line. It'll pay dividends. It's a force multiplier. You can never have enough of those guys. You are not crazy for thinking that, John. Are Mike Green and Donovan Ezeraku off of Green Bay's boards due to size? I'm interested to see. We have yet to see, let me just put it this way. We have yet to see Green Bay add a defensive end in the Jeff Hafley era. Haven't seen it. We have no idea. Now, I believe Goot kind of wants the same sort of profile, Shamar Stewart type athlete that he's gone after in the past. I think that's his cup of tea. I think that's his brand of player that he wants at that position. But we have yet to see, either in free agency or via the draft, a defensive end taken in the Jeff Hafley era. So I can't say what Jeff Hafley wants or if they sort of change some of those thresholds a little bit for this Jeff Hafley defense. Also, it's not always the be-all, end-all. They're willing to maybe make a little bit of exceptions if they can play well against the run, if they feel like they can be two-way players. It's not just height, weight, speed, but I am interested to see what type of defensive ends Green Bay is willing to go get in this Jeff Hafley defense, because we just haven't seen the answer to that yet. If I recall, you predicted the Jordan Morgan pick last year. I'm 100% sure you plan on episodes covering this, but early names that Green Bay could take round one that are being spoken around about, like round two guys. Like you said, Love and Football, I will absolutely get there. I might do an episode this week, like an early episode of like the most likely names in round one. I have it on my like sort of tentative to-do list. Like I said, tomorrow's going to be wide receiver, but if not this week, we will definitely get to that episode. I promise you. Scotty, thank you for the super chat. I will get to everyone today, by the way. If it's going to take a little bit longer, I know, but we'll get there. Anything to X posting a story of him and Jaire working out together? I'll talk about this probably a little bit on tomorrow's show, but yeah, it's not nothing. You know, it's interesting that he welcomed Nate Hobbs to the Packers, or at least congratulated him on being a Packer. It's interesting that he's working out with Xavier McKinney. I don't know what to do more with it than that. It could be absolutely nothing. Maybe it's something. But the fact that there's still connective tissue there, it's interesting if nothing else. And if you're looking for, again, we've seen a lot of tea leaves as to why Jaire may not be back in Green Bay. We got a few recently that said, maybe not so fast. The Nate Hobbs thing, working out with Xavier McKinney, Goody saying like, hey, if we, can't get ROI on him being a Green Bay Packer, we want ROI from him in a trade. Well, if they don't get that, what does that mean? That you're going to keep him on the team? Just interesting pieces. It feels like as the world turns, and my expectation still is the same. I think it's like a 90% chance he's not on the team next year, but I still would not close the door entirely. And I'm very intrigued by that little workout. My problem with Musgrave is he is in 11, he takes Kraft off the field. And in 12, he takes Reed off the field because Matt LaFleur never plays Reed as more than slot third wide receiver. If Musgrave is good, do you see Matt LaFleur changing? So a couple things on this Snoop Robbie Rob. There's no taking Tucker Kraft really off the field. Now, if you're taking Kraft off the field, it's because he needs a rest or a breather. You don't want him playing 60, 70 snaps per game, which is a good thing than to have Luke Musgrave in that situation, right? So just making it so that Tucker Kraft doesn't have to play the entirety of the game and having somebody like Luke Musgrave that can go in there, that's a plus, not a negative. In 12 personnel, I disagree with the idea that you have to take Jayden Reed off the field. Now, it may not be a traditional tight end, wide receiver in that situation, but I love the 5 offensive linemen, 2 tight ends to one side, 2 wide receivers to the other, with wide receiver and slot wide receiver on that side. So you could go Dobbs on the outside, Reed in the slot, Kraft and Musgrave connected together on the other side. I love a type of formation like that. So doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have those guys on the field. Doesn't mean that you couldn't go with like Musgrave and Dobbs out wide with, Reed and Kraft in the slot. Like you can line some guys up in some very unique ways in those formations as well. So I would not say that you have to take Jayden Reed off the field in that situation. Can you please get me info tape on Desmond Watson, defensive tackle from Florida? A lot of people think he's another Wyatt, but I think he can move to edge. Please let me know, Andy, you're the greatest man. Yeah, I'm wondering where he's at in the consensus. Let's see. Sorry. Desmond Watson. Where's he at on the list? $334. Oh, interesting. I might not get to him then. Although he is moving up boards a little bit, I guess. This isn't the super huge guy, is it? Yeah, not an edge rusher. That's what I thought when I first saw Desmond Watson. I'm like, this is the really big guy from Florida, right? Yeah, he's 6'6", 460. So yes, no, not Wyatt, not edge. Appreciate you messing with me, Daryl. But I thought that's when I smirked originally. I'm like, that's the huge defensive tackle, right? I do want to watch him. So yes, I will watch him at some point. I don't know if this is tongue in cheek, Daryl, but I do absolutely want to see him. So I will throw him on at some point. What's the farthest Green Bay might consider trading up? 15 to 18 in that range would probably be my guess. I think anything above that would be just too cost prohibitive. Even 15 is probably a little bit aggressive, but I think once you get to 15, you could at least have a conversation about it at that point. So I'll say 15. I find it amusing yet sad that no matter what we do to perfect officiating, mostly due to appease the betting world, we never get it right. Will we never stop complaining about officiating? Why replay? I think you want to get as much right as you can. And Bill, there is no perfect answer here either. You will never perfect officiating. It's never going to happen. You're never going to get everything right. There's always going to either be this world where you're doing too much replay or not enough replay, or you're not getting enough calls right, or you're getting too many right, but it's taking way too long. There's no perfect answer here. You just try to find the sweet spot. And guess what? The NFL does not care to a large extent. They want to get things right, but the controversy of getting something wrong, that sells too. There's an anger, there's a frustration, there's a Monday morning quarterback about it. Everyone's talking. Can you believe so-and-so? That was an obvious pass interference. Can you believe that Fail Mary? We're still talking about the Fail Mary from time to time. That Fail Mary had talk shows going crazy for weeks. It's not a bad thing for the NFL. So until people start tuning out because the officiating is horrible or bad, it's more of a, I don't want to say it's a perk, but it's just a piece of the equation for them. And I think sometimes even getting a call wrong can have a bigger impact and more people talking about it than if there wasn't that controversy. So it's never going to be perfect. You just hope more of the calls go your way than against you, and hope that the football gods are ever in your favor. If you found any top defensive tackle available in the draft who can replace Slayton, but also good enough to be a future Clark replacement, not yet. But again, I haven't studied a ton of these defensive tackles yet. I should get to those very, very soon in the near future. Draft and develop, what are they better at? Mike, I am so sorry because this is a super chat and I don't want to ignore your question, but I don't know that I totally understand your question. Or I guess, are you saying between draft and develop? I think they're better at drafting than developing at the moment. And I don't think that's a indictment of the coaching staff. I just think in the modern NFL, you don't get enough time with the players and you have to prepare for games. And it's sort of up to the players to develop. And there is certainly some of that individual coaching that goes into that. But I just think that the time for development is nowhere near what it used to be. So I think they're a little bit better at drafting than developing, but it's not really a fault of the coaches. When you talk about Jenkins, I know what you mean when you say he isn't Pro Bowl caliber. And yes, the Pro Bowl is stupid, but Jenkins has made it twice, just FYI. No, I for sure know he's made it twice. I'm just saying, like, I think when I say Pro Bowl caliber, I'm not necessarily talking about, again, if they made the Pro Bowl or not, or like what that exactly means. I think there's just like sort of a connotation of like more of like, is he worthy of that or whatnot? So yes, I do know he's made it twice. I don't really care. Also, he's a good player. He's been a good player. He's remained a good player. Maybe slightly overrated from my point of view, but the positional versatility, what he's brought to this team, he's been good from day one. The only thing that was a disaster was right tackle coming off the torn ACL, which was probably just a really bad idea. Outside of that, he's always been good, and I've always enjoyed watching him play. So either way, it's probably much ado about nothing. Here's a name I bet you haven't heard in a while. Snacks Harrison was on the team in 2021 for that small cup of coffee. Yes, he was, chicken. Gold cheap contracts are only good if the players are good. So why would you take a lottery shot instead of trading for a player you know good? It seemed like it's smart to take the trade side for a star. I would disagree because, I mean, of course, right? You can't build your team with bad draft picks, but you're not trying to get every draft pick, right? You're trying to get a good enough amount of them that can come in and help your team. But here's what you're sort of missing as a piece of this equation, right? If I trade a third round pick for a proven player, first of all, I would disagree with stars don't come available very often. And when you do, Green Bay has shown the ability, like Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney, to say, yeah, we're going to spend aggressively on those players, but stars don't come along very often, and certainly not for mid-round picks. Stars are going for premium selections, usually more than one. So I'm going to disagree and quibble with the star moniker, right? But you might say, well, let's say you could trade a third round pick for a really solid, good player that you know is proven in this league. That sounds good. But let's say that third year, or that player that you're giving a third round pick for, what do they usually want when they're traded to a new team, a new contract, right? So you're giving them a $25 million contract, plus you're trading away a third round pick. That player better be worth it, because I can go out and spend $25 million in free agency and get a hell of a free agent. And I still have a third round pick that is going to be cheap, and I'm hoping is going to be the next Tucker Kraft. So you're not only giving up, you're trading multiple assets in that scenario. You're trading a big time free agent signing plus a top 100 draft pick that will be cheap and hopefully very good for one really good player, or it's somebody that can come in and fit in right away. That might be older, and that might be closer to the decline than they are to the incline. So that's why those deals can be bad investments, is because they are aging. They are on the wrong side of usually 28, 29 years old, or at least they're going to be there soon. And you're not only giving up that premium draft pick with a beautiful contract attached to it for a larger contract, but now that contract's taking away a free agent that you could sign using that same money that you just gave to that player. So that's why those things do not happen far more often. You can still get the proven player in free agency, and now you have the opportunity of that lottery ticket in the draft as well. With all the valid talk about how valuable rookie deals are project guys really worth it? If you only get 2 years of great play on a rookie deal instead of 4 years of really good, is it worth that? It's another beautiful GM question that it's impossible to answer. In general, I love Goody's idea / philosophy of going big game hunting in the first round. You can find good players in free agency. You can find good players in the draft in rounds 2 through 7. Goody's kind of a master at finding good players. He has not been great at finding great players. That's a fair indictment and a fair evaluation. But he has gone big game hunting, trying to find those big time players in the first round. And sometimes you have to draft an Ejian Leon and a Joe Alexander and a Brandon Jennings to get a Giannis Antetokounmpo. And sometimes you're going to take those big aggressive swings and they're going to turn out and be in some players that you wish were different players. But if you can get the guy that is a world beater, a game changer, that changes everything for your organization. I think there needs to be some inherent big game hunting in your draft in some capacity. It should be unstated, but you are at your best when you've got some real premium players on your team. And I know I've talked about there's kind of two different ways, either have a really good team with good players everywhere, or 3 to 5 drivers that are just unbelievable players that are kind of carrying you. In an ideal world, you've got a couple big time drivers, right? And it is worth it to go and try to find some of those players because they are going to alter your franchise. Teams are going to miss on draft picks all the time. It happens. It's not the end of the world. You would like to see them be players that can come in and make a little bit more of an impact. But I don't hate that you're taking some big home run swings. And sometimes it pays off, like early on with Jaire Alexander. Jordan Love, you can argue, is in that conversation. Rashawn Gary looked like he was going to be in that conversation for a while before the torn ACL, where they were making big time contacts in some of those home run swings. Maybe not quite hitting the grand slams or home runs, but certainly some doubles or triples off of those. As of late, the Eric Stokes, Jordan Morgan, Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, LVN, you're not even getting singles on some of those guys, right? You're not even walking. You're taking some strikeouts with those. Eric Stokes is a strikeout. LVN so far, not what you're looking for. So I don't hate the philosophy. I think you need to execute it better, and you need to find premium players that can come in and be big time players. When you're picking a little bit later in the draft, sometimes you have to be a little bit more of a risk taker. I would have argued that, hey, when you're picking pick 12, LVN, Rashawn Gary, maybe you would like to see them be a little bit more of like, hey, there's just really good players right now. We don't need to hunt these guys. There are players on the board like Brian Burns, like Christian Gonzalez, that are staring you in the face that you don't have to draft and develop. But Will, your analysis is spot on in the fact that if they take 2 to 3 years to develop, that's great, but you just lost out on 3 years of their rookie deal while they were developing. And that's not ideal either. So there's a risk reward there. You have to balance it out. And the ultimate answer here is Green Bay has not done a good enough job of it. Whatever way you want to spin it, whether that's, hey, we're willing to take some risk and take 4 home run swings, hoping that we connect on one of them in a significant way. That's great, but they haven't connected on one in a significant way in their last 4 first-round picks. Or if you, are thinking about, hey, we're going to develop these guys over time and we're okay with that. Hasn't really worked out that way either. So either way, it just needs to be better. Do you think the Packers will draft the tight end still? Easy opportunity to draft one in day 3. I think it's definitely in the conversation. I think day 1 to 2 is a harder sell with Kraft and Musgrave on the team. If they were really best player available and you thought you were getting something special out of it, could they do it? Maybe day 2. I don't think they can go tight end in day 1 in any real way. I think day 2 is probably over aggressive. Day 3, absolutely. They need a run blocking tight end. Ben Sims had the opportunity to claim that number 3 job last year and did not do it. In fact, got benched for John Fitzpatrick by the end of the year, who has not been signed back to the team. They need a number 3 tight end. Musgrave's been hurt a ton. So yeah, starting on early day 3, they can absolutely look at it. If they fell in love with somebody at like round 3, they could consider it if that was the best player available on the board. But yes, absolutely could take one. All right. I was looking at Goody's draft trades. I think it was 3 of the 7 drafts he traded up in round 1, 1 being after trading down. Point being is the idea he doesn't trade up overblown. Seems like he does. Yeah, he definitely, traded up for Jordan, traded up for, I don't know if you can consider Jaire being a trade up because you traded down first and then he traded back up. What was the other one? He did not trade up for Morgan, didn't trade up for Wyatt, didn't trade up for, Savage he traded up for. So yeah, traded up for Savage, traded up for Love, traded up for, I guess, kind of Jaire. But I think it's exactly the scenario we played out earlier. If you are on your, looking at your board and there's 1 premium pick left and you got 4 or 5 picks up until your next pick, you're going to be making those calls trying to get up. And if you can, great. If not, then you probably look to move down, or you just hope that guy lasts until your next pick. What is the true Metcalf 5-year, $50 million contract that feels fake like Devontae's 5, or is it real? Just curious. Yeah, it is not. It's a 3-year deal. I remember looking at it. Give me 1 second here. It is I want over the cap, not sport check. All right, 3 years, and then you get out of it for 12 million dead. 11, 42, 74.5, 86.5. 3-year, $86.5 million deal is likely the real deal here. So 86.5 divided by 3, 28.8 mil per year. That's the real deal. Then you basically get to team options of, do you want to pay him 34 million, or sorry, do you want to pay him 28 million in 2028? And do you want to pay him 35 million in 2029? So it's basically that 3-year, $86.5 million deal, and then a $28 million team option in 2028 and a $35.5 million team option in 2029. That's the real deal of it. All right. Let's see. Where did Jacobs rank league wide in yards before and after contact? Snoop, I do not know that off the top of my head. So I'm apologizing for that. I don't know that one. I'd have to look at it a little bit deeper. I think you should refer to all of your draft prep as putting on off-season functional strength. That is exactly what I'm doing, Snoop Robbie Rob. You could have a D-line of all Shamar Stewart types, cause a lot of chaos, but not much polish, or only slower, but super refined guys. What would you choose? Where do you strike that balance? Yeah, I mean, super refined, meaning that they know how to, like, the nuance and how to get to the quarterback. I would probably lean towards a little bit more. You guys are asking a lot of these philosophical questions tonight that, you know me, I'm not going to hesitate or shy away from them, but there's not a right answer. These are the tale as old as time questions when it comes to draft. Do you want, like, the first, 10 guys off the board are going to be height, weight, speed, plus production, plus no off-field red flags, plus no medical red flags. They're the ones that when you say check every box, they're checking every box. They've got the athleticism, they've got the technique, they've got the production, they've played at a big time college. You're just checking everything, right? After that, you've got some sort of red flag that you have to deal with. Now, I mean, everyone has them to some extent, but there's more. Maybe they don't have the production. Maybe they don't have the athleticism. Maybe they didn't play at a big college and it's more of a projection because they beat up on, D3 players, whatever the case may be. There's always going to be some sort of question as you go on. And as a GM, and as a scout, it is your job to say, hey, I know this is the red flag, but it doesn't matter. Or I know this guy looks great from a productivity standpoint, but he can't do this. And it's like, in baseball, when you're scouting a player and you have trouble with a curve, this is a very cliche, lame one in baseball, but it's great if he can be, his great hands can hit the fastball harder than ever. If he can't hit a curveball, it can't hit an off-speed pitch, it's going to be a problem. If you have a huge gap or a hole in your swing and teams can just attack it over and over, doesn't matter if you have unbelievable power, strength, speed. If you can't get on base and you hit, 150, there's going to be limitations to it. So it's all a scouting / GM question at the end of the day is what matters? Does it matter that you have the athleticism? Certain positions you absolutely have to have it. Other positions, it's maybe not quite so much. And there's a little bit more nuance and gray area there. Other positions, it's, hey, I don't care that they didn't have the productivity. I'm going to get this player who I know can do everything, and I'm going to teach him to do everything. And sometimes if you have a great coaching staff that comes to fruition, sometimes it just doesn't. You end up with a player that maybe is always good, but never great, or just never develops the way that you hope that they would. $1 million questions. If I knew the answer to all of them, I'd be the best scout in the business. And I am not that, but I can pretend to be one online, and that's what I will continue to do. Let's see. What else we got here? Andy, based on the interview today, Hendrickson sounds unhappy with the Bengals, still hoping there's a chance there. But do you think that ship has sailed? He's too much to give up for. Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath, Dan. Even if there is a trade, I would not expect Green Bay to be the one that trades for him. I hope like heck that I am wrong. I would love him as a member of the Green Bay Packers, but I don't necessarily see that coming to fruition. My gut is telling me that we will trade back 2 to 3 times, 23 to 26, 27, then that pick to 30, 33. Seems like the 20, 40 range are similar. Again, goes back to that sort of scenario we talked about earlier. If there's a player that Green Bay has that true first round grade on, and if they can get up to get him, or he slides to them at 23, you're going to see them take him. If not, you're going to see him trade back. Or maybe if there's 3 to 4 guys that they like, maybe they can move back 3 spots, right? But this is going to be one the board dictates. And you also have to have a trade partner, right? If there are those 15 guys in this draft that everyone feels strong about, Green Bay might get to pick 23, not have one of those 15 guys that they like still on the board, look to trade back, and start calling around, and it's crickets because no team has a player that they also want to move up for because they've got 25 guys on their board that are equally rated. Sometimes you can't find that trade. It does take two to tango as well. Also, Minnesota, a pick after them, might be selling a little bit more for pennies on the dollar because they are really a team that needs a lot of draft picks. So they're absolutely a team that's probably looking to trade back and get more draft picks. They might be more willing to maybe undercut Green Bay one pick later. Maybe I'm the only one, but would love to hear more about that decade-long fantasy GM thing you do with your friend. Maybe a future members only video. At some point, I'll definitely get to it. Absolutely, we'll get to it at some point. Do you want Ja back if he wants to be back? If not, why? Is it the contract? I talked about this a little bit on the episode today. I don't have a major horse in the race here or a major opinion on it. My overarching feel is that I do think it's time for both sides to go in a different direction if they can reconcile. Green Bay's in a good spot with it. Jaire's in a good spot with it. Jaire's excited to be part of the team, and they can figure that out. I am totally good with it. Totally good with it. And it's just then a point of you hope and pray that he stays healthy and that he plays the way that we know he's capable of playing. So I think that the 17 million is reason enough to move on. I think if it's the 17 million plus you can get a 4th, 5th round pick in return, that's more than enough for me to move on. If it's nothing in return, I think it becomes a much more interesting question. I still think the money might be somewhat worth it if there is the disgruntled aspect of it as well, but it's not an easy answer. And I am more in the middle of, they bring him back. Awesome. Let's go. He's the best cover player on the team. And you don't have another Jaire on the team. Let's make this thing work. And hopefully just goes and balls out like we know he's capable of, and he stays healthy, hopefully, knock on wood. And if he's gone, I totally understand it at the same time. So don't really have a horse either way. I'm just going to hope that if they do trade him away, or if they cut him, he doesn't end up in a division rival or playing for a team and all of a sudden going on and having an all-pro season. And if he does stay, I hope that he stays healthy and has one of his better seasons in Green Bay. A.A. Langer, that is really, really kind of you. Thank you so much for that. 1 second here, guys. So I've had absolutely zero interest in the Packers offseason so far. Watched almost nothing of my favorite YouTubers. Think it's Matt LaFleur. Any chance he changes up anything on O? I think he's constantly evolving on offense, Gary. I think we saw him evolve in a major way. Now, maybe it didn't quite work the way, especially at the end of the year, that he or we would have wanted it to. But man, if you think that offense wasn't changed in a significant way last year, I don't know what to tell you. That was a very different offense with Josh Jacobs than it was with Aaron Jones. It was a unbelievably different offense when Malik Willis was in there instead of Jordan Love. I mean, man, they evolved that offense on the fly. So yeah, I absolutely think that it's going to continue to evolve. I absolutely think it's going to be something that they continue to make tweaks and changes to and try to put their players in best positions to succeed. I think it's a different offense under Jordan than it was under Aaron. I don't think there's ever been a season in which it's been the exact same year over year. So I absolutely think it's going to continue to evolve, for better or worse. I do know Watson, a defensive tackle. I just think we can use a bigger, faster TJ Slayton. Yeah, I mean, sign me up for a bigger, faster TJ Slayton. I would absolutely take that. I would love to give the 1st round pick for Henderson on draft day because they miss on 1st round picks generally. I'm assuming you mean Hendrickson and not somebody else here, but yeah, I would have no issue with it. I love Trey Hendrickson. I think he'd be a great fit for this team. I think it'd be really, really fun. But we talked about 1st round pick, huge contract. You're missing out on the value of that 1st rounder. Would I hate it? No. Would I understand it? Yes. Would I be for it? Probably. But I also would not get your hopes up, Craig. I don't think Trey Hendrickson's going to be a Green Bay Packer, at least not this year. All right, friends, that is going to do it for me today. Went a little bit longer, but you guys had great questions, and I always thank you a ton for that. We'll be back on Friday for happy hour. Tomorrow, I believe I'm going to be talking about 1st round wide receivers. So looking forward to that conversation. I'll see you guys then. Enjoy the rest of your night. And until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.